all business and shipping up and down the East Coast, bracing for Hurricane Florence. According to Planalytics, these companies have more than 25% of their operations based directly in the storm's path. Companies like Advanced Auto Parts, Cracker Barrel, Tractor Supply, BJ's, Ruby Tuesday, and others. Joining us now is Evan Gold, Senior VP of Client Services at Planalytics. And I thought, Evan, by the way, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
I thought it was really interesting to hear from Shane Skipper of LM Restaurant Group. They're a family-owned operation. They've got 5 or 6 restaurants here. They've got to make that decision. Companies that have 1,000 locations have to make that decision. That's where you guys come in. How do they know how long they can expect to stay closed? Is there a way to gauge that?
There is. Some of these companies have been doing this for a number of years, and they're really good at having a very nimble supply chain to make sure that they know what to get into the stores before they close, and equally as important, how to stage their supply chain so that they can replenish right after the storm clears.
The big ones, I know, like Arcima Modi, I think, is going to be at a Home Depot today. Yep. I mean, the massive corporations, the Fortune 500, they've got the resources to even conduct these storm centers, right? They can build a little war room. What about for the smaller and mid-sized? They don't have the opportunity to do that. Where do they get their best source of data and information?
So obviously we work with some of those folks, but I think for a large part, it's really about how well you communicate. I think every business, regardless of where you are, whether you're in the path of Florence, you need some type of disaster plan, some type of emergency preparedness plan for all different kinds of situations. So every business has it to some extent. I think those on the East Coast obviously look from a hurricane perspective, have a better perspective on how to deal with this.
Like any chain, the supply chain is also measured by simply the strength of its weakest link.
Yep.
Wherever that may be, one thing along that line that goes wrong or goes badly and you can't reopen. Where are the weakest links in the supply chain, right? Is it just simply getting the men and women truckers to get back on the road because they're with their families?
Right. So some of it is that. Some of it is just how quickly can you get back in. If the roads aren't open, it doesn't matter if you have the product, you can't get it there. A lot of these retailers are also relying on their suppliers, right? And they're moving the challenge upstream so that they can rely on them to also help them be good stewards to those communities so that the products are in the right place at the right time.
Especially on the restaurant. We showed, bring up that wall, Ruby Tuesday, 1/4 of its operations, Cracker Barrel, about 1/4 of its operations sort of in or around the store. This is perishable items.
It's perishable items. These are also sales those businesses aren't going to get back, right? So we're estimating the impact of the storm anywhere from $700 million to $1 billion, or maybe even more based on the exact path. But, you know, Ruby Tuesdays, if you don't go in today to go buy lunch, you know, and you go back, you're not buying two.
If you need a shovel, you're going to get that shovel, whether it's today or tomorrow. You're not going to go back in time for the meal. That $1 billion number, I want to be clear, though, you're not looking at insured losses. Those numbers are going to be much, much higher.
Much larger.
We don't know where Florence will come in. We know it's going to be a lot higher than that. What your $1 billion number is an early estimate of just simply sales that will not come back.
That's right. Economic activity that doesn't happen and just is not able to be made up.
Is there a way to gauge the economic activity that does happen that wouldn't happen but for the storm? Does that make sense? Things that you buy, for example, look at the video. People who are going out and buying 2x4s and sheets of plywood that they would not have bought but for the storm.
Yeah, so you'll see that when these companies report earnings, you know, all the home centers and the clubs, right, that they typically, you know, in their quarterly earnings will say we saw a lift because of the storm. In every event, there are winners and losers, and certainly home centers, clubs, convenience stores, gas stations tend to be winners.
Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously right now we're worried about human life and people's families and livelihoods, but when you go back after the fact and you say, okay, well, let's tally this up, because there are a lot of companies that are probably watching CNBC. Their executives are thinking, how is this going to play out? Is there a way to gauge how much it ultimately balances out? The restaurants have got to be the hardest hit.
The restaurants absolutely are some of the hardest hit. So that's why our $700 to $1 billion is the net negative. That is after factoring everything else in. That's the economic activity that just simply doesn't come back. But you're right. Right now, their focus is on making sure their people are safe, that their operations are in good position, so that when the storm passes, that they can be there for the communities and their customers when they're able to get back out.